Good morning and welcome to United Way of Central Indiana. My name is Kiko Suarez. I'm the Chief Impact Officer, and I always blame the mic for my accent. So whoever gets this mic, be ready. We are very excited and honored to be able to host this group in the inaugural events of this consortium. I was telling Ted and Elaine that it wouldn't be me if I don't remind you why we're here. And I don't know what keeps you up at night or what keeps me up at night is that 1 in 3 Hoosiers are food insecure. And that about 1 million households in Indiana cannot make ends meet. So opportunity zones are great new tools. I hope that we rely on the experts that know how to thoughtfully and sensibly do community development, like our friends at LISC. We really thank you for your leadership on this. Just a little bit of history. Back in April, Ann Merlo, CEO of United Way, got a phone call from Governor Holcomb to join and eventually lead a small group of community leaders to identify and propose the census tracts that would eventually become opportunity zones. United Way of Central Indiana has been around for 100 years. Our mission is very simple, has always been the same. We connect people that need help with those that want to help. And with the generosity of our donors, we have been able to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in critical organizations that do the work that today we are about to incentivize a bit more. With all that, I'm going to ask Ted Grain, the new Executive Director of LISC, to kick us off. Thank you. Hopefully, we're going to get in the zone very quickly. Thanks.
Can you hear me? All right. Hey, good morning. Good morning. It is so great to be here, and I hope that I can get through this without losing my voice. I gave a tour yesterday, a neighborhood tour, to a bunch of really wonderful people from IU Health, and there was no mic on the bus, and I spoke for 2 hours. I kind of lost my my throat a little bit. So LISC is Local Initiative Support Corporation. Our theory of change is that we rely on neighborhoods, neighborhood-based organizations, like many of you in the room, to tell us what your desires are for your community. And then our goal is to connect resources, connect both the people and place of those neighborhoods to opportunity. So this is just a continuation of that. Ultimately, opportunity zones is a huge opportunity. We're going to say that a few times. It gets a little tricky not to say opportunity when you're talking about opportunity zones. But that is the point of this day today, and this effort is to really truly connect the opportunity of opportunity zones to the people and places of Indianapolis. And so we had this idea, well, first of all, back when I first heard about opportunity zones, I got pretty excited. And I think I got excited for 2 reasons. One, I was pretty excited about the potential of the impact, maybe trillions of dollars, right, of capital gains that previously had not been directed towards low-income communities could potentially be leveraged to do the work that we're trying to do. So this was very exciting. I also got a little excited because when I read the legislation, there weren't immediate guardrails on the legislation. If you think about how opportunity zones evolved, essentially the one guardrail is that the investment has to happen in an opportunity zone. But the community benefit piece, it's truly, I think, up to us to make sure that we maximize this opportunity for our communities. So with that, we embarked on a journey to think about how we could create something that would help those two excitements happen. In other words, match potential investment to create projects that are community impact projects and truly impact the community. So we went on this journey of talking to lots of different folks in this system, and we talked to most of you, so that's, I think, why you're here. And ultimately, I would say, so we ended up partnering with a bunch of wonderful folks, including the Indiana Bond Bank, the governor's office, the lieutenant governor's office, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, who you're going to hear from in just a sec, the IHCDA, the Housing and Community Development Authority, the Indiana Finance Authority, IFA, as well as other CDFIs like SENAIR, like the Build Fund, like INHP, who's in the room as well, and other entities of community development like Prosperity Indiana, IEDA, so the Indiana Economic Development Association, and I'm sure I'm missing a few. And I think one of the key moments was when we realized that, this is something that's so tangible, such a good idea, that maybe it should be the portal and the way that our state handles opportunity zones. And so with that, I really want to introduce Elaine Beadle, who's the head of the IEDC. And Elaine can speak to this from a number of different fronts, not only in her role as the lead of IEDC, but also from her years of investing or advising the investment of folks with high net worth individuals that that could potentially be the ones that invest in opportunity funds, in opportunity zones, in these amazing projects. So Elaine, thank you for being here.
Good morning, everyone. I think you're picking me up okay on this mic. Good. Good to be with you. Thank you to all the partners that are here, because this is a great consortium, a great way to really move this forward in the state of Indiana. And thank you all that are attending, because I know you've got some important part to play here as we move forward with this opportunity. I am president of the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, and in that role, I do get an opportunity to travel across the state and talk to, business people, to economic development groups, developers themselves, and others. And I can tell you that, Indiana is really kind of on a roll. We're really moving in the right direction. Okay, we didn't get Amazon, I know that, but, well, and put a little context to that, in the last 14 months that this has been going on, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation has got commitments for 35,000 jobs. Remember, they're only going to get 25,000 each, over 365 different businesses. So we've got a lot more diversification in our economy than having one employer with all those jobs. So, well, and what we all like to say, as Hoosiers, we like to create our own anyway. So we're looking forward to building, perhaps through these opportunity zone opportunities, our own Amazon. So, but we're not going to rest on our laurels, as none of you want to. And so we're looking for ways to continue to encourage growth, attract talent, and to revitalize all of our communities. And regional cities kind of did that. It really helped to get things started, and we've learned a lot from that. And I think a lot of what we learned there can apply to the opportunity zones. That planning really makes a difference, and going and looking for what should be in this particular geographic area that will help this community to attract business and to attract talent is what we really need to be thinking about. And if we can do that successfully, we'll see, as Ted was saying, that benefit of that spreading way beyond those little geographic areas to the rest of that region. So we think this is a great opportunity. And, we've been working to fully leverage this opportunity. It's hard to keep saying opportunity, don't you? But as you know, Governor Holcomb, that was referenced, nominated 156 zones throughout Indiana. And those zones, I think, ended up in like 38 different counties, or was it more than that? I can't remember. Mark Losky probably remembers for me what the number was. More. It was more than that. Out of 92 is probably, how many?
I think it was 83 different.
83 different counties had been touched by this. So there's a great opportunity totally across the state. And, partnering is what we need to do. And as was mentioned, again, we get back on track, Ann Mertlow was the head of United Way here in Central Indiana, chaired the committee that actually helped select those 156 different tracks. And to give you some background on what criteria they used. First of all, they were looking for first the economic and the community data. Where are we looking at? Did they qualify? Existing economic development programs, growing industry sectors that are already within those communities, and how can those be added to? Local coordination efforts, the likelihood of attracting short-term and long-term investing. In other words, there could have been some zones that there was a very low likelihood. So we wanted to give ourselves the best opportunity for success here. And then recommendations that were submitted across the state. We got almost 2,000 recommendations in the portal that came from developers, but local officials, government officials, et cetera, and what they thought would help in their communities. So now that our 156 tracks are identified in the latest regulations, I'll say latest because I think we expect another round of regulations coming soon, it's really time to get focused. And it's just one more tool in our toolbox. And as Ted mentioned in my previous life, or it's still my life, I just stepped away shortly, this is a big deal for investors. I mean, the opportunity that anyone has when they've got capital gain kind of locked up in investment. And as you all know, nobody likes to pay tax. So they don't want to sell that investment because then they've got all this capital gains tax to pay. So that was the whole idea behind creating this, was to give those investors a motivation, a reason why, or that they could sell out of that investment, create their capital gain, but not have to pay tax on it until 2026. So deferring tax is always good. And then that tax, some of it could go away. In other words, you get to exempt potentially 15% of it on that original. But then the big key that every investor is going to be looking at, if I choose wisely and I'm in a good investment, then all of that growth on that original investment never gets taxed as capital gain. So it's a great deal for investors, a great motivation. So we've got to get them to unlock that and then to put those back into those areas that can really help our communities. So along with the investor benefit, along with what Indiana already has as a very pro-business growth perspective. I mean, we've been named #1 in the Midwest and #5 nationally for the best place to do a business. So along with that, that's going to help those businesses. And then the other incentives that IEDC can provide. So if you can find a new business to move into an opportunity zone, their investors get a benefit. They're going to be able to be much more profitable there, and we can actually provide additional benefits for them to add more employees and to invest in that area. So all of those things are good, and that package of benefits, I really hope, becomes irresistible to some of the businesses and some of the real estate opportunities that we may have in some of these areas. So this consortium, and obviously the interest that has been displayed here today is really evidence of something that I'm learning is quite unique to Indiana. Now, many of you like me may have grown up here and been here, so we're kind of used to what we see as all of the collaboration that happens, not between government, between community leaders, between educational funders, between everywhere. The collaboration is terrific, and that doesn't happen just everywhere. And we hear that on a regular basis from some of the site selectors who work with us in the state in their business and other states. So for those of you like me who've grown up here all life, we take that for granted. But obviously that collaboration is going to help us move forward in a very much more quick way. In fact, we've heard from some friends we have in Washington, D.C., that the idea of creating this type of consortium is really the ideal way to approach these opportunity zones and to really make the most of it. So we're getting kudos from Washington, particularly the Economic Innovation Group that actually came up with this policy and this legislation, said this is really the ideal way to really approach this and bring all the stakeholders together and be moving in the same direction with the same purpose in mind. So on behalf of the governor and the state of Indiana, I really do want to thank you all for being the partners here today that you are and to move this thing forward, because know that the state of Indiana is all in. We're talking everywhere we can. We're spreading the word as far as we can and trying to get all of our local economic development people up to speed on what this might mean when they get an opportunity to show that potential business, all of the areas that say, but you can even get a bigger benefit if you go in this area. And I think that will carry a lot of weight. So again, I don't want to hold the program up. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I'm anxious to hear the panel discussion that comes up. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Elaine. And I'm just going to briefly go back a second to make sure that we thank some other folks that I didn't quite mention. So Okra, the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, has also been engaged. Veteran and Veteran Foundation has played a key role in supporting this from the get-go. And the Indy Chamber, and particularly Develop Indy, and they're here today, playing their role as a local economic development organization, the LEADO, for the city of Indianapolis. And I think I got everybody else. So that's great. So thanks, Elaine. I think I'd like to now introduce, we couldn't do this without partners, and we couldn't do this without a lot of collaboration. And early on, we talked to a lot of financial institutions that were very interested in supporting and participating in this consortium. And one in particular, Fifth Third Bank, emerged as someone that actually wanted to support it and see and make it happen. And so I'd like to welcome Kevin Hipskin, the regional president of Fifth Third Bank. He's representing today the Fifth Third Foundation. And they are key supporters and really the lead sponsors today of the consortium and the portal that we're launching today. Kevin.
Thank you, Ted. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We figured, I talked to Ted earlier, we figured we'd switch mics so the people sitting on this side that necks were getting sore from looking that way could now be looking this way, and this side could move their necks this way. So appreciate it. Thank you, Ted. And on behalf of the Fifth Third team, we are proud to sponsor today's event and excited for this program launch. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our history. I'm going to tell you about a little bit about innovation, and then I'm going to talk about what we're so excited about today. I'm going to do that all in a couple minutes so that we can get to the panel discussion. But Fifth Third Bank has a long history, and they have a relatively short history in Indiana, though. We bought a bank charter in 1989 in New Palestine, if people didn't know that. And we've grown from that single financial center in New Palestine, Indiana, to being the third largest bank in the state since 1989. But our history goes back much further than that. It goes back over 150 years before the Civil War. And I would like to attribute that in no small part to the fact that we have always been committed to giving back to the communities we serve, and we've always been all about innovative spirit. And that's what's really cool for me today, is I think we're going to see an intersection of that. Fifth Third Bank, you may not know, in 1948 was the first financial institution to form a foundation. So that goes back to our commitment to serve the community. And probably you also don't realize that in 1977, the first online ATM network in the United States was brought online by whom? Fifth Third Bank, and its name was Genie. So something that you often don't think of about with banks is they're at their foundation, giving back to the community and innovating. And today, again, like I said before, we're going to see that intersect. But I'm really excited about that. Fifth Third Bank actually in recently as 2016 announced a $30 billion commitment to communities that we serve. I'm happy to say that in 2018 we're more than half of the way there, and we've changed that commitment to $32 billion because of that. Now we would call that a Fifth Third better, and we're excited about that. So we're living out that promise here in Greater Indiana, and today we're announcing a $100,000 grant from the Fifth Third Foundation Strengthening Our Communities Fund as a presenting sponsor for the Opportunity Investment Consortium of Indiana. So at this point, we want to actually present the actual check, because you can't have a $100,000 grant without a bank street check. Jadira Hoptree also is in charge of our Community and Economic Development Group.
So we also want to invite the key partners that have been engaged with this all along. So Sanair, here, let's.
Yeah.
And how about it? That's good. And actually, everybody that wants to come up.
Make sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, Fifth Third. It's truly wonderful. So our agenda today is, right now, we're just going to go over the concept, what we're talking about. What is a consortium? What are we trying to do? And then we're going to have a panel discussion led by Mark Woolner from the Indiana Bond Bank, and a bunch of wonderful panelists that will kind of talk through how this really could work, and how we might make it happen. The first thing I'd say about this consortium is it's only going to work if we all actually make it work together. And so that's why it's kind of a truly collaborative process that we've been trying to do all along. So the idea is that we could launch a rapid deal advancement and connectivity hub for Indiana's opportunity zones. What I'm going to talk about briefly is the historical context of opportunity zones in just Indiana, a little overview, very brief, of what opportunity zones are, talk about how we've been building the consortium, and then we're going to activate the portal. It's actually live right now, so that's great. So every so often, the federal government launches a new initiative that's designed to really help communities around the country. Some examples of these are the urban enterprise zones, hub zones, White House Space Initiative, new market tax credits, promise zones. And we actually have some representatives of the Indianapolis Promise Zone here today, social innovation funds, and more, right? And every time Indiana and communities around the country struggle to adapt, see if we can actually leverage that new opportunity and that moment in time into actual impact in our communities. An example of this is in Indiana that we didn't necessarily do so well in is the new market tax credit, launched in 2000. We responded immediately. We tried to set up some processes around it, but ultimately today, our history in the market tax credits, even though we've had some wonderful projects, wonderful things have happened through new market tax credits in Indiana, we still lag behind other states in the use of that tool. And yet we have a state that's known, as Elaine pointed out, for collaboration. Brookings Institution points us out as a place that has perfected a culture of collaborative action. So leveraging that part of our DNA, we thought we could create this consortium. So here's the concept. Essentially, opportunity zones. So does everyone know everything there is to know about opportunity zones? Okay, good. So I think we're all still learning. So part of this is actually, this is a learning community that we're creating today. And so we're going to continue to refine our response to this federal initiative that really, quite frankly, the regs are still coming out. right? So we're still learning. But the goal of Opportunity Zones is really to encourage long-term private capital investment in low-income communities, both urban and rural. And the governor's office did a wonderful job of selecting 156 census tracts that were spread out strategically around the state in really good spots. And what it is it's an incentive that is a long-term tax deferral based off capital gains invested in these zones, and then a tax exclusion from those new capital gains if you gain new capital gains as a result of an investment in an opportunity zone. But ultimately, it's an equity investment. So you have to have an ownership stake in the investment. There has to be a return on investment. And it's set to sunset in 2022. That's pretty soon. So we got 3 years to figure this out, take advantage of it, and it may not come back, right? Hopefully it'll get renewed. It generally seems to get renewed, but that's the time. So what are the eligible investments? So ultimately, you can invest in an opportunity zone in a business investment or in real estate, and also in kind of new equipment and other assets. Some economic development examples that we've already started to think about as ways that this could be used. A business infrastructure real estate fund, maybe a TOD fund or mixed use, venture capital funds. And it's particularly good for pairing with other federal tools like new market tax credits or historic tax credits. Affordable housing, already the deal that we know that has happened in Indiana, and we're going to hear about in just a sec from IHCDA, was an affordable housing deal that was paired with an opportunity fund. So there's lots of potential there. So there's some strengths to the opportunity zones. First of all, the local designation, the fact that the states were allowed to designate it, that's fantastic. And it's a very flexible tool. It attracts a new investor class, like the high net worth folks that really haven't been a part of the community development system in the past. And it's pretty straightforward to use. And the potential is billions of dollars, right, that could potentially be brought into these places. There's some potential concerns. I think there's currently not a good, clear sense of what the oversight would look like for these. There's not necessarily incentives tied to community impact. There's a sense that this could be used as an accelerate displacement or gentrification. And potentially the use of this tool could maybe minimize the other tools that we have, such as the market tax credits, et cetera. So the consortium, the idea, so that's kind of the overview of opportunity zones. And if you have more questions about that, there's lots of information online, and we're happy to talk to you more. And there's other folks here, particularly some of the lawyers in the room that might be really good to talk to. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is connect investors through this consortium and their capital and resources to support projects in neighborhoods, healthy neighborhoods, schools, housing, jobs, businesses, industry, job creation. And this is kind of our theory of change, is that if we do this right, we can actually support job creation. We can transform these places. We can support businesses growing and thus providing jobs for neighborhood residents. And then we can really drive the system innovation at the local and state level around community development. So one of the key partners in crime, and you actually got a chance to see most of them when we took a picture with Chegg on this, has been my colleague Rachel McIntosh, who is the Senior Opportunity Investment Officer for LISC. So she has a national role in supporting economic development efforts around the country with LISC. And we've been fortunate to have her be involved in this project as well. And so I'd like to invite her up to start talking us through the details of the consortium, and then and particularly showcasing the portal that's live today. So Rachel.
Greetings, everyone. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the consortium basics, and the chances are, if you're here today, it's been said, we may have talked to you, that group up there, hopefully some of us at least once, if not multiple times. But the basics are the same. I mean, the goal is really to encourage long-term investment, to be intentional about it in low-income communities, both urban and rural. This is a way for us to have a shared table. It's a pilot for these first couple of years as we pool knowledge and assets across organizations. And also coming up with an online platform for folks to find out about the Opportunity Zone funds that exist. That's going to be a steep climb as we have projects and businesses that are ready for investment, but this is such a new tool. And so what we came up with was a web-based platform to begin to connect folks with investment and pair that with co-investment as well to get the deals to the finish line. So it's all about rapid deployment, but refined pairing of that and working together to especially clear barriers for the more difficult projects as well. So the infrastructure has what we've come up with here. We have sponsors that have come in as investors. I'm going to go over those who are on the portal already, who have been the early adopters. Those are accredited investors and sophisticated investor partners that span financial institutions, equity funds, impact investment funds. Sagamore Institute is here in the room. Jay Hine has been involved as well. They have a platform that they're using just for Indianapolis that we are seeing increasing thoughts about how this could work together as we motivate individuals to learn about projects that are a little bit more difficult, but understanding them so that they can invest and pair with these traditionally federal and state tools that there are. And then we have a number of education and resource partners. Those are both public agencies, city governments, but also trade associations like Prosperity Indiana, AIM, and the Indiana Economic Development Association that will really help us get the word out and get this out to the memberships and the communities that need to hear about this. So we'll be all partnering together to offer workshops, webinars, and the like coming forward together. And then as we've done this, it's just been really encouraging to see the Indiana professional and expert community step up to the plate and really start to learn about this tool, offering webinars and so forth, and we'd like to see that increase. We have a number of legal and accounting firms, as well as consultancy firms that have come on as early adopters that say, hey, if you want to know about this, we can help you close this deal, we can advise this process and get some of the best knowledge to this process so that you can move your project. And then we have, with any collective, it's an initiative, right? We're not forming an organization here, we're not forming funds. There are folks at the table who have already formed funds or have the intention to form funds. We're going to be working with foundations. There are foundations here on the list. You can use your donor advised tool potentially to come into this type of transaction. So it's a new day for all of us to sit together with the bond bank and to think outside how we've traditionally paired these tools in unique ways. And so the backbone organizations that will support the portal list is going to be housing it, but it is collaborative in nature. So the state of Indiana has agreed to help us shepherd that across the agencies. They have lead representatives that will be on the consortium, helping to, if we need to talk to transportation or work with brownfields, making sure we're working in tandem across those organizations. Indianapolis and the Indy Chamber will really look at Central Indiana, SENER covering statewide together with the Indiana Bond Bank, as well as working with OKRA and ICDA and IDC. Is critical to making sure we get moving on this with the best information possible. So here are some of those logos on the backbone organizations, as I just mentioned. On the investor sponsors, you'll see a number of what we are called community development financial institutions like LISC and SENER and Bankable and the Build Fund. We have several financial institutions as well as foundations. The Indianapolis Foundation as well as Luminar have come in to learn with us and co-invest when they're able to use their tools as well. I mentioned Sagamore, Saw Capital, which is venture funds. And then we have Under the Sun up here as well, the owners involved in that. They're located in an opportunity zone and they work with a number of investors to work on many issues through that corporation as well. PNC Bank, Old National was one of the first early adopters and really saying, how do we get these to work? And of course, Fifth Third has come in very strong and really helping support being the presenting sponsor here today and making sure we can get this done effectively. And then the professional services, we have a number of the law firms in town, accounting as well. So you'll see Bose, Ice Miller, Creed, Cool & Grant, MCM has formed a Midwest Opportunity Zone Forum, which is a great place to get on that website. They have a webinar even today on the regs. It's really Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky working together again to advance best practice. You know, many times the Midwest and the South pick up the crumbs on federal initiatives, and we want to make sure we say we're open for biz, we're ready to go, don't overlook us here. Taft, the Pelican Group, and SME with a specialty in brownfield and environmental clearing as well. But the point is to uniquely collaborate, right? We want to propel projects that are meaningful and meeting community action outcomes and bring that to actualization. So with that, I'm going to pull up the portal. Yeah. While I pull it up.
While you pull up the portal. So I mean, the key concept here is we call this day building the consortium. So we're still building the consortium. So these are the early adopters, right? But I think the idea is that there's a lot of other folks out there that could participate, and we need to make sure that they know about it and can feel good about participating as well.
All right, so we've gone live. We're previewing it today. You will see on this page here, it is www.opportunityinvestmentconsortium.com. You'll find out, here's a place where you can look for information about the opportunity zones, or you see webinars that are coming up, cross-posting this. We'll be taking this today so we can make it available to your peers. You will find on here an application. It is very high level. There are many optional fields. The point is bringing your deals at all stages of development and readiness. The point is we are here to take a look at those, and we have those that are poised to be ready to invest. That won't happen on the portal, but it is, when you load a deal, it's not going to be live to the world. It is offered up to those who are the investor sponsors. They will immediately be alerted that you have a project, and they will reach out with you directly to do a deeper dive to see if this is something that they can co-invest in. So we have a page here for the investors to sign up, as well as professional services. Again, this is a place where you get a phone call from your peers or a developer or a business owner. You know, who can I turn to in Indiana? We've got a number of firms that are headquartered here that are really stepping up on this issue, and it's great that we don't have to go out of town for something like this. We've got a great cadre of experts here already working on this. And then on the training and resource partners, you'll see many of the nonprofit associations as well as the public agencies, again, that you can reach out to directly to say, okay, where do I start and the like. So you will be able to, we'll send this out in the slide deck as well afterwards so that you can toy around with it. But the point is to get your projects in and help us build the pipeline. I'm gonna pull that slide deck back up here.
So on building the pipeline, I think ultimately, and I think this is kind of a realization that we had early on, is that what we're doing with this is actually in essence building the prospectus for investment in Indiana. We're building the prospectus for investment in Indianapolis. And so part of this putting the deals in that may or may not be completely ready is the idea that, well, is there a gap? Could we help fill that? Could the state agencies and subsidies and social impact investing and opportunity funds, could we help make a good deal happen faster?
Right, I'm gonna pull up. I think we're moving into the next piece here.
Okay. So I think we wanted to take a couple questions right now before we jump in to the, because we just kind of went over a lot. And particularly with the portal, if there's any thoughts, questions that you have, anybody? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Brian Shapiro. I own Shapiro's. We're in an opportunity zone. We have excess property. One of the things that always disturbs me as a small business person is the amount of overhead when you do these deals. So if I come to you with a project that says $20–25 million project, we have say $6 to $10 million raised, rather than going to the banks or an insurance company, are you saying that you're going to have an efficient way to get to the Indiana Bond Bank, or to a more efficient mechanism?
So we're saying that instead of you having to go to basically everybody in the room and have a conversation with each one of them,
Right.
to get whatever the gap is that you need or the financing that you need, that you would be able to submit it to the portal. The folks that are the member investors would get a first look, as well as the backbone agencies. And they would get a first look at your deal, whatever that deal is. So you would, and the detail is, as Rachel was saying, isn't that deep. It's not providing all of your financials, right? It's describing where you're located, what the deal is, what the opportunity is, in pretty high level. But this way, it streamlines that process of finding folks that might be interested. The idea then is after that first look, if an investor is interested in your deal, they would contact you individually. And immediately you could talk to them and have an interested conversation at a higher level.
And what type of returns are you looking at, are the investors' expectations from low to medium to high? Or?
So I think that's ranging. So we've been talking to national folks about this. There's an expectation in venture capital that, you might have a return of 20% or more. But in this range, I've heard from 6 to 20%, but other folks in the room might have a different opinion. But any other questions maybe like that, or about the portal, or just to see a couple of thoughts, and then we're going to move into the panel. That was great. Thank you that was great. Okay, so it's now my honor to introduce Mark Wollner, who's the Executive Director of the Indiana Bond Bank. He is responsible for the overall performance of the Indiana Bond Bank and provides control over the vision, purpose, strategy for the Indiana Bond Bank. So, Mark, I think you have it from here.
Thanks. Bring your panelists up.
Yeah, we're talking about kids.
Got one more coming. Good morning, everyone. So excited to be here. My name is Mark Wollner, as Ted mentioned. I'm the Executive Director of the Indiana Bond Bank. And you may be thinking, what is the Indiana Bond Bank doing here at the Opportunity Zone Consortium? Don't you guys just do bonds? And really, Ted asked me to take a couple of minutes to explain what the Indiana Bond Bank does and why we're here. We live to provide access to capital for local units of government. So we are there to connect schools, cities and towns, local police and fire, libraries, connect them to cost-effective capital. And some of that is sometimes going out to the market and issuing bonds. More often than not, though, we're helping schools get affordable deals on school buses. We're helping lay cost-effective water infrastructure in southern Indiana. So we are across the state. We're the state's extension to the Office of the State Treasurer, who chairs our board. We're the state's extension to provide cost-effective capital to local units of government. And so the first time Ted and I met was in our office when he and Rachel came over to talk about this Opportunity Zone opportunity. And, this is very much, you feel like, I think we have the sense here, you're still kind of building the ladder as you climb it. And we think about, we brought our team together and we thought, boy, it'd be really easy and convenient to sit on the sideline and just wait for everything to kind of flush itself out and then maybe step forward after that was all figured out. And really we looked as our role, our responsibility on behalf of local communities in Indiana is to be out there looking for the next, that next tool in their toolbox. And so we thought it was really critical. Rachel, I think I called you back just later that afternoon and said, we're in. We don't know what this backbone is, but we want to be the backbone entity for the state of Indiana to assist with governor's office, lieutenant governor's office, and moving this forward. I think before I turn over our panel, there's really, again, 3 reasons. The bond bank's already investing across Indiana. We are already putting money into these communities. And this, again, as we do the work on community development, creating quality of place, that we think we're priming these communities for this economic opportunity. So that was the first reason we really stepped up. And the second was, and I think you can see by the panel next to me, is the spirit of collaboration and coalition building that LISC brings to everything. So we knew if LISC was involved in leading the charge, we pictured a day like today when we have this great diverse group of panelists, public sector, private sector, philanthropy, all here, rowing different oars, pulling the boat in the same direction. And so with that, I would like to take a minute to introduce our panelists and let you hear their various perspectives on opportunity zones. To my immediate right is Gary Hobbs. He's the president of BWI and a partner of a joint venture firm called Opportunity Zone Real Estate Advisors. To Gary's right is Ian Nicolini. He's the VP of Economic Development at Indy Chamber. In the middle, we have Sam Spergel, the Director of Real Estate Production at the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. Next, we have Tom Moore, Manager of Community Engagement at Vectron Foundation. Last but not least, Jadir Hoptree, VP and Manager of Community Development for the Fifth Third Bank. So welcome all. So I will ask the panelists each a few questions. We'll leave some time at the end for your question and answer. This will be a great session. So Gary, if I can start with you, and I think we've got the roving mic. Gary, I've known you. You've been invested in serving low-income communities through your work in affordable housing for a long time, and now you've been involved almost from the start of the Opportunity Zone legislation. So maybe you could take a few minutes, just set the framework of what Senator Tim Scott's vision was for this, your involvement, and just what the purpose, the intent behind Opportunity Zones are.
Yeah, sure. So, I was very fortunate to have gotten tapped on the shoulder to volunteer, right, for something I had no clue what I was volunteering for. But it sounded pretty cool to go out to D.C. in the White House shortly after President Trump and Vice President Pence were inaugurated into that role. And so Senator Tim Scott I got a call from him, didn't really know who he was at the time, to be honest with you, but had a great opportunity to chat with him and others from EIG about this, at that time was called Invest in Opportunity Act. And once me and about 20 other folks nationally were invited to help provide additional input, it really sounded too good to be true. And be quite frank there with you guys, I was like, this thing would never, ever pass in Congress. It's just too good to be true. And but anyway, it was still fun going out to DC, every other month or so and providing ideas and making sure our role here as a committee, Economic Inclusion Committee of Senator Tim Scott, was just to really make sure that the ideas here around Invest in Opportunity Act, which is now called the Opportunity Zone Bill, had all the major tenets here to make sure that it really accomplished his vision. And even though it's bipartisan, Senator Cory Booker on the Democrat side was a co-sponsor of this bill. We really wanted to create a few key things here. Number one, we want to be pretty easy and accessible for people to be able to access it. So that's the reason why you as an individual literally can create your own fund. So we want to make it simple and not have this kind of CDE approach that new market tax credits kind of had there to it, that limited folks who could really invest in deals. And also by design, you guys, it was really, and it probably will continue to be a thin framework around opportunities on investing. So the committee that I'm on is still going on. We're just kind of one conduit into the Treasury through Senator Tim Scott. There's a lot of other kind of feeders into folks who are continuing to improve the bill. But one short story here, as we were working as a group, it was around November timeframe, and literally it happened very, very quickly that, this Opportunity Zone or Invest in Opportunity Act got slipped into the new tax bill. And only a few of us really knew kind of what was going on. And to be honest with you, I was pretty nervous because we all knew that there was a lot of holes in it. And of course, now we all know that there's a lot of holes in it, right? But nonetheless, it was pretty, even though it was kind of nerve wracking, it was kind of exciting to see it happen. And, some of the pressure that we have, and I say we intentionally, is that Senator Tim Scott and folks at EIG, they really are looking at Indiana being the front runner. And I know I met with Elaine and several other folks here in the room, sharing the little pressure that I have as a representative of this great state, making sure that we do things right and fair. We have a process. I know Tim and others in IEDC and IECD, Oprah and others, I think have done a phenomenal job of just making sure the entire process has been fair, because we will be under the microscope as a state, as one of the examples of how to do it right. And this consortium is a part of that solution. And so I'm excited about it. And now it's a matter of making sure that the deals that we are pushing through are the ones that create, and Senator Tim Scott's vision, a financial return, but also that social return as well. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, one of the reasons why, BWI, we've been in this space for 13 years. I'm operating in these low-income census tracts. I have a good feel for the types of deals that we think would work, and working with other developers to make sure that we really kind of push the intent of opportunity zones throughout the state. Okay.
Gary, have you seen that intent evolve at all with the new regulations? I know those are still kind of under comment, but are there any maybe 1 or 2 takeaways folks might take away from kind of regs that are out there that you've had a chance to look at?
Yeah, I mean, there's at least 2 of them that have a huge impact from a developer perspective. One of the ones is the rule that allows you to put ozone investment dollars into somewhat of an escrow account. So you can put in escrow, you got 30 months to kind of draw on those funds, which makes sense here for a lot of deals where there's construction, rehab taking place. So generously, the Treasury gave us 30 months to kind of spend down those funds in escrow, which makes a lot of sense. I think the other really big one here for a lot of investors, including ourselves, is the opportunity here to kind of divest those funds, within that kind of 10-year period, if you will, and reinvest it. So you don't have to wait until the term, whether it's 5 or 7 or 10 years. Most people want to keep it in the 10 years to get the full benefit of the capital gain on the new deal. But with this new rule, this new regulation, where you can actually sell your stock or an asset prior to that, it opens up a lot more opportunities for investors. You still got to keep it in the fund at the ozone level, but that is a huge benefit that we think that's going to really stimulate the market here of individuals investing in projects and businesses.
Thank you, Gary. And Sam, that prompts something. Maybe I can jump to you. Gary's mentioned the regulations are still evolving, and yet Ted or Rachel mentioned Indiana's already seen an opportunity zone investment. Can you maybe give us a little bit of background on that deal and talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So to start, I don't have favorite projects, but this is a pretty unique project in Brookville, Indiana, which according to Wikipedia is about 2,600 people, which is significant because it's important to note that opportunity zones are not just in urban locales, that they are also in our suburbs and our rural areas across the state of Indiana. So Valley House Flats is a mixed income, 9% low income housing tax credit project, approximately 47 units. They are in the midst of closing on funding for an opportunity fund. And in talking with Rachel, we think this might be one of the first, if not the first, funds to close on a Section 42 mixed income project, which is very exciting, especially in that it's happening here in the state of Indiana. In talking with the developers, this is a nonprofit called Batesville Senior Cafe. The use of the Opportunity Fund, which is they're estimating between 1.7 and 2.2 million, really is going to allow them to add those extra amenities that they would not necessarily be able to add to this project. And this project it's a historical project. It's in downtown Brookville. It's an old hotel, and when you're dealing with that type of rehabilitation, as for those that are developers in the room, we know that those costs do add up. And so having this resource is a great tool for both on the developer side, the investor side for IHCDA and the state of Indiana, as well as the persons and the communities that are impacted by the use of this fund. So it's very exciting, it's incredibly innovative, and it's exciting.
That's fantastic. And maybe speak a little bit more about the perspective that Indiana Housing brings toward both the consortium and maybe the portal, and why you've signed up to be a backbone entity.
Certainly. IHCDA is the conduit for the low-income housing tax credit program on behalf of the state of Indiana. We also oversee 30 plus different programs, and I'm lucky enough to work in our real estate department that works a lot with our HUD capital financing and our voucher program. And when we begin to think about our role in supporting the capital stack and supporting development and providing technical assistance, IHCA has a role in continuing as we think about how an opportunity fund can be used. But we're sort of at this precipice right now, and in talking with Jake Syke, our executive director, really looking for feedback from the development and investor community on where we should go next. And there's really two different trains of thought. For those of you that are developers in the room especially, who are aware of our 9% tax credit program, we have just ended our tax credit round as of yesterday, and our awards were announced at our board meeting. And we are gearing up to write our next qualified action plan, which will be the document that outlines our policies for the next 2 years and how we utilize this IRS program. And so I asked the audience to provide us feedback during that public process on which direction we should go as we begin to think about investment with opportunity funds. Do we increase the amount of IHCDA subsidy in those projects that are utilizing those funds so we can have higher quality projects, or do we then, as an alternative, really focus on having allowing those funds to take the place of additional IHCDA subsidies, so then we can develop additional supportive housing or affordable housing across the state. And so again, I'm looking to those in the room to help us think creatively and outside the box and where we go next as an agency and as a state as we begin to think about our role in affordable housing development.
Fantastic, thank you. As you speak about policy, it makes me think, Jadira, I know you're CRA compliance officer. I think one of the things maybe in the minds of a lot of folks in the room is kind of that big elephant of how do opportunity zones, what's the policy in terms of how they play and interact with this Community Reinvestment Act? Like how does that all work, and are you prepared to talk about that?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. To start with, I just wanted to say to Mr. Kiko Suarez that I agree. The microphone is the fault for your accent. This is the best proof. So as a CRA compliance officer for Fifth Third Bank, we looked at this very carefully. Our requirement for any CRA compliance in a financial institution is to make sure that our dollars stayed to support low to moderate income areas in the housing and the small business side. So the opportunity zones came up, and you read on the presentation, I don't have to go through those, all those concerns about gentrification, about displacement, we were quite concerned. However, when we learned about the consortium and when Ted reached out to me to talk about the consortium, we thought, this is genius. This can be the solution to at least reduce those issues or to be upfront of those issues. And that's why Fifth Third is so excited to be part of this initiative, because the fact that a room like this of so many key leaders of Indiana and with the oversight and the leadership of LISC give us a sort of certainty that the majority of those going through the portal or investing through this will keep in mind that this is going to low to moderate incomes to really to help those areas to improve without displacing and maintaining the integrity of those markets and those areas as well. So it is a great match through the CRA compliance for us to make sure that at least 50% or more stay through those requirements.
Fantastic. You talked about kind of that impact on communities, and I think that transitions really well to Tom. Tom, you work, we've seen you in everything from Muncie to Madison over this course of this last year with Vector and focused on communities. What prompted you to say yes, and what's kind of Vector's perspective on the consortium and the portal?
Right. Like many of you, we believe that the program can really be a game changer in driving investment into areas of communities that have largely been forgotten. But I think Gary touched on this. Maybe just as importantly, it provides an opportunity for relationships, for discussions around those areas that previously hadn't occurred. That can be incredibly impactful.
Fantastic. As I mentioned, our panel is very diverse. I think we've heard from state, from foundation. I think we don't want to lose the perspective that Elaine started us with on economic development and really driving investment into Indiana. And fortunate to have Ian Nicolini on the panel, who does this day in and day out for Indianapolis and Marion County. And, hoping you're working to bring business into Indianapolis, Marion County every day. How do you see the portal, the consortium assisting with those efforts?
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everyone. So a bit of an overview. Develop Indy, our organization, works on contract with the city of Indianapolis and the mayor's office to attract, expand, and retain businesses in the community. As a chamber, we also have microloans and business coaching and our voice of public policy for the business community. And in that role, and Elaine hit the nail on the head earlier in her remarks, we need tools to grow the economy in Indianapolis and in Indiana. Having an opportunity fund in your community, or if you're a developer looking to source equity into a project, the ability to create your own fund presents a real, we're going to do this again, a real opportunity to make projects that otherwise might not get to the finish line, to get them over the line. And to do that, you need unique partnerships and a lot of diverse tools. Yesterday, the Fifth Third, in the spirit of sponsoring everything this week, had the economic forecast. And one of the most interesting points of discussion was the notion that in order to grow the economy, grow a workforce, we're going to have to get marginalized working populations, people that aren't even counted in unemployment statistics. Part of that 69% workforce participation rate here in central Indiana, back to work. And that's not a question of just job creation. That's not a question of just job readiness. It's a question of job access. The ability to get people to jobs and to get jobs to people. When you hear people talk about an inclusive economic development strategy, that's what we're talking about. The notion that there are barriers and capacities that need to be built in communities in order to rebuild a successful middle class. Now, no one organization can do that effectively. We think that, as Ted said, having a prospectus that highlights the ability as a community, as a region, to come together, to marshal resources, to build partnerships, to connect people to jobs and jobs to people, is really the essence of what this portal does. It is a manifestation of the kinds of partnerships you need to have in place in order to tackle the issues of job access. And this portal does that in a lot of ways, but it only does it if people load their projects. It only does it if people participate. You're only going to get out of this what you put into it. And so while many of organizations like mine have varying levels of pipelines, it's going to be on us to say to those developers, to those property owners, to those interested small businesses, large businesses alike, that this resource exists, and to help them understand it. This is a lot of hand-to-hand tackling the issues of job access. This isn't just, hey, there's a resource, click the link. This is going to have to be something that we work through. But I will say, though, that if we get it right, and this drives investments into communities that are consistent with what those communities' visions are for their neighborhoods. And again, speed to market is going to be critical, right? So you're going to need the neighborhood as a partner. You're going to need land use and zoning, business community support to make this work. You can't do that without understanding the community's plans, putting forth good ideas, and then shopping it amongst our partners. That's what's so exciting. Because in Indianapolis and central Indiana and across the Hoosier State, partnership is the key. That's the secret sauce. That's how we're able to compete. This is the next layer and the next level that aims at tackling the impacts of marginalization, of economic inequality, and some of the spatial challenges, some of the barriers that are impediments to job access. That's why we're participating. We're really excited.
It's fantastic. I'd like to open up now. Any questions from folks in the audience, when you've got access to these, again, this diverse group of panelists with varying perspectives, would love to hear your questions for them. Please.
I'm just trying to get a feel, not only for the panel, but for the room, of where people's minds are on the opportunity zones. And I kind of look at it as three buckets. One is housing. There's many things we can do in the opportunity zones with housing, affordable housing. The second would be job creation industry. You go into an opportunity zone, you create a place that creates jobs in the area. So that direct job access, bringing jobs back into areas. And then the third is direct investment. Okay, I'm going to start a business in the opportunity zone, or I'm going to invest in a business in an opportunity zone. So just trying to get an idea for what the panel's heard or what the room feels. Where are people focused? Okay, are people more focused towards the housing in this room, more towards the creating a place of work in an opportunity zone, or more in the direct investment? And the reason I ask that is so for the room, we can, if we're all thinking in one area, okay, let's reach out to our friends who think in a different area.
Fantastic. If I may, panel, I repeat the question for folks on the online feed. Question is really getting the perspective of the panel in the room of how we see opportunity zones in Indiana. Those three buckets you predicated were housing, job creation, or direct investment, and really getting a feel for the panel of where maybe both where the need is in Indiana and then where maybe most of the pipeline is going to be in Indiana.
I guess I'll take a stab at this because it's all of them for us. So that's the benefit of a program like this. At the Indy Chamber, like I said, we have microloan programs. So to Gary's point earlier about being able to sort of recycle an investment through an opportunity fund, create some opportunities to fund businesses. That could be really attractive, and that's a tool that we want to leverage. But we're, the mayor in Indianapolis has been very clear about driving economic development in neighborhoods, and that's a housing strategy, that's a job strategy, that's an access strategy. So I think from a policy perspective, from an intake perspective, give us what you got. But your question, I think, was more to the folks with money and not just the resources, so I'll shut up.
Yeah, just to add to that, Jonathan, I mean, I do agree. I think it's going to be a mixture of all of the above. One of the things that we're seeing here with our consulting group, Opportunity Zone Reinvestment Advisors, a little bit more on the real estate side, maybe because from an investor standpoint, it just feels a little safer when I invest $100,000, $1 million or more in something I can sort of touch and feel. There's collateral behind it, right? Because these investors don't want to lose their money versus a business, which is a little kind of squishy, right? You buying stock into a business. But what we're saying, there's good businesses, there's good real estate deals, but there's also bad real estate deals and bad business investments. So I think the challenge is going to be here creating, and this is one of the things I like about this consortium and this portal, is helping business owners and developers on the real estate side really think through their deal, right? And present it accurately, identifying what the risks are, and then matching those deals, whether it's a direct investment business or real estate deal, with investors and their appetite, right? And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it pans out because we really don't quite know today yet whether you're going to have all investors who are looking for the next Amazon or Apple project or company, right? Or, with a 20+% return on investment versus we think there's going to be a group of investors that are saying, geez, I'm actually okay. I probably would have gave this money away, a philanthropic gift, but I'm actually okay here with a 3-4% return. Why? Because this project is going to generate X number of jobs and opportunity and help a community that I drive by, and maybe I grew up in that area. I'm out in Carmel now, but I grew up in downtown area somewhere, one of these ozone areas. I'm really still passionate about that particular area and the people who live in there. So it's going to be a nice spectrum. So we want deals that reflect those risk and returns and social returns across the entire spectrum. And we'll see how it turns out. But this tool And what this consortium is doing is exposing deals to different types of investors, and we'll see where people start lining up at. If everyone's on the upper echelon, some of these lower deals may not get funded, but if everyone is kind of have this social component to their heart, and then you see banks like Fifth Third and others in here that say, hey, look, we're going to put some money behind this as well. We're going to incentivize those deals. We're going to create some credit enhancement type tools and mechanisms so that people feel good about investing in a 3%, 4%, 5% return project. Then we'll see more of those deals kind of coming through.
Please.
Yeah, I totally agree. To add to that, I do think that that's part of also our job as, the investors and the adapters, the early adapters for the consortium and for the portal. I do think that we are going to see interest in all these areas, but as we continue supporting the consortium as well as the portal, we will have to build it in collaboration. One thing, for example, that us, Fifth Third Bank, and I know that many of the financial institutions here do, is that we offer community need assessments as a part of our CRA regulation, which, by the way, for all of you, the ones that might not be familiar, CRA stands for the Community Reimbursement Act, or the oversees that the financial institutions serve the population, especially the low to moderate income areas. So as part of our CRA regulations, we have to accomplish community need assessment surveys. So in those small areas, we do have information of the needs that are there. We have the response from the community organizations as well as government and housing agencies of what they determine to be the top needs. And it's not a surprise, it's housing, economic development, and so forth. So by us informing and impacting the portal with that information and then be able to connect those organizations with the portal, as well as the investors of those areas, it will hopefully, and I'm very hopefully with capital letters, bring investments for actually those specific needs that those small communities are identifying. In the other way, we also, as a financial institution, we receive a lot of requests. It's very interesting. We talked about the millennials, and I receive a lot of inquiries for the generation of millennials that are children of wealth management clients, etc. And they're very interested in that social portion of being able to provide community impact investments in the communities that they grew up. It's a new generation that with a lot of vision into that. So by us being able to use the portal to inform those that through this portal you're going to be able to identify those needs and those communities, we'll be able to connect those dots.
I think one more point to mention is that we've talked a lot as a consortium about the need to be flexible, to be responsive, and so Prosperity Indiana is a great partner, does a great job with training and information, and so I think there will be a lot of discussion and effort put around trying to decide what ways do we need to pivot, if it's job creation, if it's housing, all those things. As Ian said, it'll be a comprehensive sort of opportunity toolkit. And so I think that's something we've talked about a lot, and I'm sure Keith will talk about that regarding next steps.
Keelan, yeah.
I have two questions. One is thinking about VCs and thinking about potentially tech startups. I know that Indiana has been really trying to think from a state legislature perspective and legislation that we're passing. Are we tech friendly? So what do you see as really the role of this group in making sure that we can also utilize opportunity zones and potential tech startups and innovations, especially I'm thinking of rural communities about agricultural innovations that are going on, potential startups. And then secondly, the other question I have as well is how are we going to get the information out to the rest of the state, particularly in rural communities and those that are outside of the Indianapolis media market?
Fantastic. So first question was in the venture capital tech startup side. Obviously, Indiana is putting a lot of thought into how we become and maintain ourselves as a tech-friendly state. And really that question of how we connect this group, this consortium, this portal, and align it with those efforts on the tech side. And particularly with the focus on rural, agribusiness, agri-innovation. So panel, maybe start with that question.
I'll start off on the tech side, since by training I'm an engineer. I'm kind of a techie underneath this developer kind of skin. But yeah, we've actually looked at a few opportunities on the tech side. Several businesses here a few businesses that we work with that are looking to expand in an ozone area, which for me I think is super exciting, because there's a lot of young people out there like I was that grew up in a low income area that was very fortunate, got exposed to another engineer who just came down to the area to kind of volunteer and let people like me see them doing well in this kind of space of computer science and engineering and so forth. So opportunity zones and bringing businesses in those towns and in those areas, whether they're rural or in urban areas, and exposing kids to internships and job shadow. I mean, I see a lot of opportunity there. And so we really do have a lot of talent in these low-income communities that need businesses that are going to be willing and motivated now to actually take a risk in starting tech businesses in these areas. So I'm super excited. I think it's going to happen. Well, I know it's going to happen because, there's at least a couple that we're consulting with today in those areas. And we certainly want to promote it and involve organizations like IEDC and others to actually recommend new businesses to actually start in those areas as opposed to your traditional just downtown areas, which by the way, many of those are opportunity zone areas also. But consider putting them out there at the 30th and Martin Luther King area. Consider starting a business in that area and have that big social impact. So I think it's going to happen. It's going to be interesting to see, how it goes about. But on that same vein, and I'll shut up here, is that, these incubators, business incubators, tech incubators, those are great project concepts that work at a real estate level as well as at a business level. So I do anticipate seeing a lot of small startup type businesses going to these incubators that will be in these ozone areas and getting their first start there and hopefully expanding into other facilities in those opportunity zone areas as well.
Just quickly, I think that the process that the state and cities went through to solicit feedback to select areas that would ultimately become the opportunity zones was a really excellent process in terms of identifying areas where market momentum could be generated or is being generated. But I would also say that a lot of the opportunity zones that we see, and this applies to urban and rural communities, is the ability to look at adaptive reuse, industrial redevelopment, brownfield reuse, which to Gary's point allows for clustering, which allows for collaboration and innovation. Oftentimes these are in emerging neighborhoods, that buildings with character, breathing some new life into those opportunities by creating jobs. And I think doing so in a way that's consistent with the plan and vision for that community really creates a lot of synergy where that becomes a very attractive investment. And then you look at partners at the local and state levels that make decisions about incentives and infrastructure investment. You really start to layer on the resources for a good project.